listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the Awards Watch Podcast, episode 283. I'm your executive editor, Ryan McQuade, and joining me today is Josh Parham.
Hello, hello.
Just me and Josh. Those are the best episodes. Sorry to everybody else on the team, but when it's just me and Josh, these are short, sweet, to the point, and maybe a
I
little
will admit, though, actually, and it might be surprising, but I actually do like it when Jay is here as
Oh,
well.
well, you just like a punching bag. You like to get
Maybe
on
so.
Jay. Jay just like underhands the softball and you knock it out of the park every
Well, it's so
time.
easy for him.
It,
Yeah. He's an easy target.
we had a lot of fun last week. It was a really great episode last week, but it's just me and Josh this week. And we're going to talk about Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza's film Warfare in the back half of this episode. But we're actually going to talk about something, breaking news that happened this week. Well, not breaking news, but like news that broke this week. The Cannes Film Festival lineup was announced. A lot of big names, Josh. This means that, we can all start speculating, not just about the award season, but like what films could potentially be going to certain places, certain film festivals, what's being held, what's not, but also what's in competition for maybe the biggest prize now. And it's always been a very important prize, but I feel like it's a very precious prize now to have, which is the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. Josh, a lot of big names here, a lot of big directors and directors that you and I both love. A big spectacle also as well in this lineup, and a lot of discoveries that we'll also find out. And also, we found out this is not it. There is more still to come.
As
This
there
is
usually is.
as there usually is, but this feels like this is the bulk of it. But we will have at least a handful of more, maybe bigger titles or surprises to
Maybe
come.
two or three more movies that they'll announce. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Josh, when you looked at this lineup, what did you think of it?
Well, a can lineup always to me looks good on paper when you first get it because it's all just mystery and excitement, and you don't know how all these movies will play ultimately, but you're very excited for them to be unveiled. So I looked at this list and I thought there are a lot of interesting titles here from directors that I really like, some of them more than others, but I'm really fascinated by what these are going to end up being. I always really do like the can lineup initially, and you have to wait and see until you see the movies to see how strong it ultimately will be. But on paper, it looks pretty strong for, in my opinion.
Well, Josh was at last year's Cannes, and myself and Eric and Sophia will be at this year's Cannes, and we're really looking forward to it. This is my first time going. Josh last year's, and Josh has got to give me all the pointers about where to go and what to do in between my screenings, and hopefully, Josh, how was your ticketing system last year? Were you good on that, or was that a struggle? Or
Uh, it was interesting. We're definitely going to have a conversation about that because
yeah,
there's some things that you need to know about the ticketing
okay,
system,
good.
which that doesn't need to be a conversation for right
No,
now.
I don't think the
But
listeners are going to be like, wait, how do I get into that ticketing system?
yeah, yeah.
But
Uh,
it's always
it's an interesting process for
it's an
sure.
interesting process. It'll be a lot of fun and a lot of exciting things for
Yep.
sure. Um, I mean, I think that between you and me, this lineup is pretty great, and this is mostly everything I think we expected would be here. But to get confirmation is another thing. To know that, I mean, listen, Josh knows this. I'm a big fan of Mission Impossible. To know that Tom Cruise and this quote unquote final installment, at least for now, because of his contract with Paramount and the fact that the movie cost $400 million, I don't think they'll be making a mission film anytime soon. So this
And
is,
the last one not doing that well, so
yeah, well, it didn't help that that one like literally came out and then like a week later was Barbenheimer,
yeah,
and
no, the
all
timing was
the,
horrible for it.
yeah, and like Indiana Jones, not that that movie did any good either, but like that had come out, so like they didn't have any large format screenings to
Yeah.
help them. But this is like being built up as the event of the summer. It will debut in Cannes a week before its release, and I'm super excited. Cruise will be there, Macquarie will be there, the cast will be there, to be able to see what is one of my favorite franchises Easily a top three franchise for me in the game. Um,
And I think
is
that title was expected to be there too because Top Gun was there. They
Yeah,
always will usually program a big blockbuster in the out of competition section. Last year it was Furiosa. So I think most people kind of expected it to show up here, but it is nice to have that confirmation.
it did feel like it was either that or F1. This one seemed more likely though, just because of Cruise's connection. I felt
Yeah.
like they wanted the festival wanted that Top Gun Maverick feel and vibe to it. And I'll say this, this is not a shot at last year's lineup and the films you saw there, Josh, but it wasn't as auteur driven as this one seems to be. And I think that has a lot to do with the strikes. I think this had a lot to do with delays in films and the studios not being able to have as many. I feel like also too, the films that were the auteur films like Horizon or Megalopolis did not hit up to the expectations, but it led for a chance for discoveries.
Yeah.
But ultimately, an auteur did take home the top prize, which was Sean Baker,
Yeah, sure.
because
But at the same time, like if it was a more auteur driven festival, would something like All We Imagine Is Light have
mhm.
broken out as much as it did? That I'm not going to say like that came out of desperation from the festival. I don't want to go quite that far, but I do feel like that was a real discovery that came about because the conversation wasn't necessarily getting dominated by these other bigger titles and bigger filmmakers there. So it's a balance that you strike with that kind of thing.
True, and I think the same goes for the Substance, which had an
Yeah.
enormous run, and was able to carry itself. And then, whether you like the film or not, Amelia Perez is another film that was huge and started its sort of dominance until it didn't have dominance, but it still won, um, two Academy Awards and won an acting prize and carried that over and
hmm
um,
13
and
nominations. Yeah.
13 nominations leading the day. So like that's not saying nothing there as well too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and then like a movie like Flow came
hmm
out here from
Yeah.
Cannes as well too. So a lot of and this is the thing is that the crossover between the international branch of the Academy, this is when it starts. And I
Yeah.
know people are like, "Oh, is award season year round?" Well, it kind of is because movies are being released. That's what I
Sure, you
tell
get
people all
maybe
the
a
time.
little you get a little respite, maybe just in terms of the conversation a bit.
Yeah,
But like Cannes, yeah, really has now become the launching pad for so many movies and the Oscar conversation. It's kind of crazy to think about that now. Like I look back at like last year and how many Oscar winning movies or movies that won in categories at the Oscars that premiered there is kind of crazy.
and not just even there, but then obviously even Venice, because our top
Yeah.
two winners on the night, one was the top film, one of the top films at Venice, and the other film was the top film at Cannes. So it's these international film festivals are showing, and also the films that are generally they get the buzz because once Honora won the Palme d'Or, like we said last year, it really then started carrying that passion, that buzz to Telluride, to TIFF, to New York, and such on and such on.
hmm
Um, I also am looking very forward to seeing Out of Competition, Spike Lee's latest film. Josh knows how much I love Spike Lee, and to see, even though it wasn't announced, and that was a little questionable, trying to lock down Denzel. I feel sorry for all those Othello people that are not going to see him that night that spent all that money
But I
as
love that
tickets.
Spike was just like, "Oh, I got the invitation, so I'm just going to announce it myself. I'm not going to wait for anything
The
else."
continuation of I'm going to announce the Palm d'Or right up at the
Yep.
top of the show. It's perfect. Spike's back. Highest to lowest, his remake of High and Low, with Denzel Washington. I'm super excited for it. We saw a new still for the film. It's the first time they've worked together since Inside Man, and yeah, this is to me this is just as big as like when De Niro and Scorsese worked together. This is a 3-4 decade partnership that has carried on, and we'll get the first look of that um, in Cannes. In competition, there's a lot of names that we know of. Josh, in the in competition, what stands out for you for the films that are going to be competing for the Palme d'Or this year?
Well, I think obviously one that is very interesting to me is Eddington from Ari Aster. really fascinating director. I think his movies they really carry a very singular kind of perspective from him, and I like that he actually seems to now be pivoting away from the horror. And and I like that because it doesn't seem like he wants to be locked down to one particular thing. So very fascinated about that. Uh, I knew that the internet was absolutely going to lose their minds about the history of sound because that is Josh O'Connor and Paul Mescal playing lovers during World War One era. That does interest me, but honestly, like the director of that movie, I'm also really fascinated by because it's the same guy who did Living
Hmm.
with Bill Nighy, but he actually did another movie called Moffy, like from 2019, I think.
Yes.
And I really liked that film. I thought that was a very striking, visually speaking, like really interesting looking movie. So I'm more so fascinated just based on that than necessarily like Living, but very very interested in it. And another one that did catch my eye that I think I am also very fascinated by is this movie, The Secret Agent,
Mm.
which is the Brazilian movie that's going to show there. And I feel
Hmm.
like after last year, we like anything Brazil related, we have to pay attention to because it's at very least it will drive traffic to whatever
Josh is
website.
gonna get like 1,000 followers this week for mentioning Brazil on this show.
I mean, I know how to play the game at this point, but you know what? It also that movie also stars Wagner Moura, who
Hmm.
is another really good actor and also incredibly hot. So this is another reason I'm interested in seeing that movie. But yeah, I mean, just in general, like Brazil feels like it's on a wave now.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in cinema coming out of there.
And just also too the fact that it's something outside of just European films.
There is that.
Seeing
Yeah.
some, would love to see more films outside of the European or American field that break through. So Central America, Asia, um, those films deserve to be in competition for the biggest prize from Cannes. I There were a couple of all the films that you mentioned are films that I am very much looking forward to. I think the film that caught my eye in competition the most is Sentimental Value from Joachim
Mm-hmm.
Trier.
Yep.
And again, working together with Renata Reinsve, I was not. Everybody knows this. I'm not like the biggest fan of Worst Person in the World, but this idea sounds very fascinating to me. It sounds very personal, and it's Neon's biggest player. And I think they're also working internationally with Mubi on this as well too. So it's this sort of Mubi's prominent here. They have a history of sound.
Mm-hmm.
They have a film. They have another film I'll talk about here in a second, and they have this one. Um, the Palm Door has become the Neon Door the last 5 years. And so
Yeah.
if you're looking to place your bet, if you're trying to see what a movie could potentially win, it could be that. Um, I believe it's also an English language film too, which would mean Trier's debut with an English language feature.
I don't think
Um,
it's his debut. I
or
think he
is it?
had another
Did he
English
have another
language
one? Okay.
movie. I think he
Um,
did.
like a long time ago. But either way, I am looking forward to this. It's for me a movie that I think, Josh, if it has the potential, if there's a movie that has potential to break out for not just Neon, but for Trier into our international spot for director, that's one to keep an eye on there for sure. I'm very much looking forward to the other film from Josh O'Connor, The Mastermind from Kelly Reichardt,
Mm-hmm.
a director
Yep.
that I absolutely love, one of our great filmmakers that we have, and the cast is stacked in this 70s art heist film. Sign me the hell up for that. What a patient filmmaker Kelly Reichardt can be. Her last film, Showing Up, was at Cannes as well too. A film
Which I
that
love that movie.
I love. That film, very underrated. Michelle Williams' performance from that film, and so I'm highly looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Julia Ducournau's follow up to Titan and Alpha, a film that, from the description of that, feels like a very personal film for her, a fictionalized account of the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s, told through the perspective of a young girl. The first Still Alone was beautiful and then also terrifying at the same time. I don't know what's going on there, but it's Julia Ducournau, a very, very, very um, singular filmmaker. I don't think many people make films like that. I don't know how much of a horror aspect that this movie is going to have, but I do think it could be very striking. And it could be, it feels like it's going to be completely different than what we usually see from her. Um, we got a new Wes Anderson film. That was not surprising, given that we literally got the trailer for
No,
that like minutes before. Like the
and
lineup
the
was.
trailer looked like a Wes Anderson movie.
I have not seen the trailer, Josh, and I'm going to kind of
I
keep
can
it that way.
understand that. Yeah.
I'm I love Wes Anderson, and I have been in the bag for his later films. And I think that he's doing actually some of his most thematically interesting introspective look work over the last couple of years. I really did love Asteroid City, and he's coming off of winning an Oscar for Henry Sugar, and this is his follow-up to all that. There's some interesting, from what I can tell, there's a lot of interesting wigs, a lot of familiar people that we know in his films. The look of Benedict Cumberbatch absolutely scares the shit out of me. Just from a concept, not from any dialogue that said it
Just
looks great.
aesthetically speaking,
Yeah, that
yeah.
the beard and terrifying.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I'm really curious to see how that is. Second film from Richard Linklater this year, New Wave.
Yes.
Um, I am terrified of this movie.
Yeah. I don't know what to really expect from it. The one thing that I can surmise is that it's probably going to be like a hangout movie because that's what Linklater does very well. And it'd be interesting to see like his style of a hangout movie applied to the making of Breathless, which I can see how that would translate actually. And I actually do think that would be like a really fascinating exercise for him. Don't know also if you've looked up who the actors are that are going to be playing the characters of Jean-Luc Godard and Belmondo, but that would be enough for me to be interested in the movie. If you haven't looked that up, I would say do that.
It's a good
Uh,
Google search. That's what Josh is saying.
yeah. So I am like fascinated by it. I think it is very easy to misfire for sure. But again, on paper, very interested to see it.
Very interested too. Linklater has another movie that premiered in Berlin
Hmm.
with Ethan Hawke and Andrew Scott, who won Supporting Actor Prize there, and Margaret Qualley. The title of that film is escaping me at this point, but I've heard nothing but great things about that film. And Sony Pictures Classics, I believe, has that, and they're going to be pushing that one later this year. It's very rare for a Linklater to have two great movies in one year. I'm just nervous because it feels so on the nose for this movie to premiere here. It also feels like a movie that could easily be very sentimental instead of being more reflective, which I think like Linklater is one of our greatest filmmakers in terms of collecting time and showcasing time. And this could be a really interesting film, maybe something that pushes him as a director in his form, and be a cross between forward pushing of that and homage, or it could just be a straight up, just like kind of basic film from him as well. He can do that. This is the guy that still made like Last Flag Flying and Where'd You Go, Bernadette, and movies like that that hadn't really like hit for me as well too. But he's
Yeah.
on a heater, Josh, and that's why I say that too. It's like Hitman and God damn it, I don't even remember what the other film was that he had out that premiered at. Do you remember what it was
At where?
at Berlin? Um,
I cannot remember the name of it. I just remember Andrew Scott won something. That's about all that retained for
Blue
me.
Moon. That's what it was
There you
called,
go.
which is about,
It's about a real person. I knew
yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
about Linzard Hart, who was a partner with Richard Rogers of Rogers and Hammerstein, and
Yeah.
this is all. It's like a contained film. It's like 90 minutes too, which is kind of like great in the wheelhouse. And that's the other thing too is I think Linklater went with movies like that. He's been making more restrained films over the last couple of years, so it'll be very interesting to see that. The Dardenne brothers obviously have a new film,
Of
so they
course,
have to
it's
be.
Can.
They
There's
will win
if
a
they got
prize.
something, there's
They
gonna
they
be.
they will win a prize. They've won, I believe, a prize every time that they've had
I
a
think
premiere.
so. And they have
Uh,
multiple Palm d'Ors, I believe, as well.
so
So
just also, if you want to bet on something, They're gonna
They'll
get
get
something.
at least something. Honestly, that was sort of like with Godard too. Every time Godard had a movie, they would give him something,
Yeah.
which is kind of annoying.
And I'm really looking forward to Jafar Panay's newest film as well too.
Hmm.
A filmmaker I find fascinating, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he has to present. There's a ton of other films here, as well as the um, you know, more to come. We will have a full
Oh
break.
yeah,
We will have a full breakdown of this preview once we have the full lineup.
because they
Myself,
haven't even announced a Critics Week yet
nope.
either. So
And
there's
so
still a ton of other movies left to announce for this festival.
absolutely, and we will be on later this month and
Mhm.
talking about all those, and we will be at the festival.
I'm
And
already jealous. I am.
I'm not trying to rub it in, Josh. I'm
Well, no,
not.
it's all right. Because honestly, like I'll be going to something else later in the year anyway, so
Well,
it'll be fine.
we
But
all we
it doesn't matter.
all
I get jealous all the time.
one way or another, we're all going to make each other jealous.
Exactly.
But um, yeah, and we'll be doing also some. I'm going to tease. We'll be doing some live podcasts. Myself, Eric, Christina Yearling Barrow of Pop Culture Confidential, and Sophia will all be doing these. We'll be doing 2 episodes at least there on site in Cannes, recapping the week and talking about the films and how we feel about everything, and maybe placing bets on what will win certain prizes. It'll be a really exciting time. More coverage on Cannes coming soon. And if you want to go on the website and read all the films that are up there, you can go to awardswatch.com. New film released this week. There were a bunch of new films
Yeah.
that were released this week, right? There was like, I feel like there's like 4 movies that were released, and like nobody, I mean, like, you saw like a bunch of them, Josh. I've seen them
Yeah,
as
because we
well.
had
Like
The Amateur come out,
the
Drop
amateur,
came out.
yeah,
Yeah.
the amateur, more like amateur hour, because
Yeah, I didn't
those
really like that
the
movie.
drop more like it's dropping to streaming here in 2 weeks, because it will be,
Yeah.
and
And the
and
drop was fine,
yeah,
but
drops okay. I
yeah.
saw
Even
I
though could not get over the fact that that movie is supposed to take place in Chicago, and let me tell you, it does not take place in Chicago.
it looks like Seattle. It does not
I
look
think
like.
they actually shot it in like Louisiana and Ireland.
Well, that's the thing is, I've heard a lot of things are getting shot in Ireland and made it look like America because it's cheap. It's now cheaper
Well,
to
yeah.
shoot internationally than it is to shoot in the United States of America.
Well, I mean, The Brutalist.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Look at that.
there's a clip that's been going around, but like Rob Lowe was on a podcast with Adam Scott, and they do whatever that game show is on Fox, and it's easier to fly 100 contestants to Ireland and put them up than do it in Los Angeles on the Fox lot, which is
Yeah.
absolutely insane. But the film we're here to talk about this week is the latest film from A24, which is Warfare. It's from directors Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland, who were the creative team behind last year's Civil War, which was a huge hit. Josh, that was a huge
Yeah.
hit last year that I don't think a lot of people talk about. I mean, it was a movie called Civil War, released during the middle of an election season. And I saw the film at South by. I thought the film is a very interesting film. I actually don't think it's bad. I know that, I couldn't, upon reflection, sometimes you don't know what you're seeing with the film. I thought it was surprisingly as less offensive as possible, and really not even about the Civil War of itself, but the aftermath of what we're going to do. And I know a lot that kind of pissed people off that it didn't really take a stand, but I kind of felt like that was kind of the point of the exercise. But they're here doing a different kind of film, a different kind of war film. This is lifted from accounts of an event that Mendoza himself and other members of his unit were on this mission that went to hell, and it's all done in real time. It's like a 95-minute movie. Josh, they've been marketing the hell out of this thing. They're getting like Kit Connor and Charles Melton to kiss. Like they're doing some of the most annoying stuff you could see from a marketing campaign in a while. And yet this movie has done pretty well for itself. It got just an A- cinema score, which is the highest an A24 film has gotten since The Iron Claw, which is pretty big and significant because like
Yeah.
A24 releases like 95 films a year. So Josh, for yourself, well, what is your relationship with Alex Garland, Josh? I feel like when we talked about last week on the retrospective, you were a big fan of Ex Machina, and I don't know if we talked a lot about Civil War last year or Annihilation or even Men for that matter. But what's your relationship with Alex Garland, and what did you think of the film?
Well, Alice Garland, I think, is a very talented individual. And I really do like most of the things that he has worked on. Obviously, I kind of come to him first from the writing perspective because that's how he started out. And, he wrote 28 Days Later, which I think is a legitimate masterpiece. Like, I love that film. Sunshine, also really like until the ending. But, which you kind of say a lot about Alex Garland movies. It's great until
It's
the
like
ending.
Alex Garland's a little bit like Stephen King. It's really
A
good
little bit.
till the end.
Yeah, even 28 Days Later, I think, kind of falters a little bit towards the end, even though I love that movie overall. But I do think that his filmography is really interesting, and I am, I do really like what he does in terms of exploring kind of thematic exercises with a lot of his stories and characters, which is why it's interesting that Warfare is really the one thing from him that kind of strips all that away from a writing perspective and really goes in on the filmmaking. And because of that, I think it's pretty obvious that Warfare to me is probably his best directed movie, just in terms of the immersion and creating the space of real tension that you feel for these characters in this situation. And it goes all in on that with the intention of kind of stripping away anything that you could relate to the characters, which I would actually say I was mostly fine with in like the first half of the movie. I actually liked that it was just very process oriented and it wasn't really concerned about giving us all these other details with the characters. It was giving details about what they were going through and what they needed to accomplish. And then you get this really impactful moment, obviously, when the attack happens, and it's great. I think the second half of the movie is when it loses me a bit. I think the momentum really just becomes kind of stagnant at that point, and we're getting repetitive, which there's a point to it, I grant you, but it just wasn't as effective for me. So it didn't really end as strongly as it began, but I would still say, on the whole, a fascinating exercise, great filmmaking behind it, good performances from what we saw. Yeah, a good movie that I did mostly enjoy, but I do think that it didn't have great follow through for me at the end.
I think the movie's a really surprising film which is, I guess, how I have to come into most Alex Garland movies nowadays, Josh, which is not have any expectations because I put all the cards on the table. The man burned me earlier in this decade with Men. One of truly the worst movies of the decade so far.
I didn't hate Men, but
You can
I can
understand.
understand why people did. It's so blunt in what it's trying to do.
Blunt's putting it like calmly. It's I don't think that there's it's they're just like kicking you while you're down and just like beating a dead horse. This is like
Rory Kinnear saves that movie for me. I like his performance.
it is at least the one performance where you're like, okay, at least there's something here.
Yeah, I like what he's doing,
And even
but
like I like Jessie Buckley a lot. I don't feel the movie does anything for
no,
her.
no, not
And
really.
really just by the end, it's an endurance test of 90 minutes that feels like, endless psychological torture. And so when Civil War came out, that was an idea that I thought was dumb. I really thought it was actually kind of irresponsible of an idea based off of the marketing. But then the marketing in that film is different than what you get in the film, right? And
Yeah, I
and
would still argue the film itself is not good. I did not really care for Civil War, and I didn't like it actually because I just felt like, not that it needed to take a side of anything. I needed just more information about like what was happening
yeah,
and like why we got to that point. And I think for a movie like that, I need it because you're essentially creating a new like alternate future.
yeah.
And those are details that I need. Like for something like Warfare, where it's just characters in real life, fine, strip everything back. That's
Mhm.
okay. But if you're essentially creating like a sci-fi movie, well, I need to know like the finer details of things so I understand why people are making the decisions that they are making. And that I didn't really like in Civil War all that much.
Yeah, I don't need like a pamphlet or anything before I go into a movie,
No,
but like maybe like a just a sequence and some an opening crawl and
some world building is
just
what
a
I need.
simple little bit. I don't want exposition, just like a little bit of like this is what happened because like this movie kind of does that in a lot of way. Like they say like this movie is a movie of a collection of memories. Like this is what this is, and it's like okay, cool, totally get it. Like at that point, it's like I know what this movie's going to be. It's not hiding what it is. It's not trying to lie either. It's just what these people's recollections are of this horrific event that they all went through. Cool, boom, gets me into the movie, right? Um, I still think like technically speaking, on a technical level, that movie is super fascinating. I think it's got really great performances. One of the better supporting actor performances from Jesse Plemons. Like that scene alone is just fantastic. Um, but this movie, I is so far right or so close actually from um, after Civil War. I was like, damn, this movie is coming out so quick, and there is the sort of in the back of your head wondering, is this going to be, a little bit of a, propaganda movie for the military? And so that has that in the back of your head. But as we all both know, and everybody knows about Alex Garland, it can't just be that simple because he doesn't make movies that are that simple. There's a point to it. And for the most part, I was lucky enough to do a Q&A recently with Garland and with Mendoza and their military consultant, Brian Philpott, for a screening in San Antonio. And I learned a lot that night, as well as also in the prep for it, that a lot of this movie is Ray Mendoza. Like, he is the real director of this movie. Like, in order to get a movie like this made, you have to have somebody like Alex Garland on it. And since this is his vision and his story of all these guys, including himself, um, it's very personal. And I actually felt that. You can feel that in the storytelling. And sort of stripping everything down, Josh, it was great for me because I was like not looking for the frills or like a sort of a Black Hawk Down ripoff, which was kind of what I felt, and it kind of went in the opposite direction. It didn't have all these great young actors in it and have them each have like a line of dialogue where they're like explaining like where they're from and what's their sign and all this other crap that I don't need in a movie like this. It's just like throw them in the war, get them in the situations, and go from there. And I thought that it was just really effective in the way it does it. Just like Civil War, the sound design of this movie is exceptional.
Yeah.
It's some of the best sound design you're going to hear probably this year. I was able to see it, and then I saw certain sequences in IMAX as well too. And yeah, this thing was like a full on experience, and it's kind of weird that at least in my area, a lot of the IMAX screens were taken up by the amateur, and they were and people. So a lot of people won't be able to see it in IMAX, but they really are able to use the sort of claustrophobic nature of this large format and really make it work. I think the stuff that makes the movie interesting, at least for me, or the final 5 minutes of the film, where I do feel like that's where Alex Garland is actually this idea of these guys getting, spoil alert, these guys escape or leave their mission. In those like last 2 minutes are the enemy, which mostly you would think everybody's been shot up. Actually, like really not a lot of people are shot in this movie, which I found very interesting. Like all those bullets, all that, all this damage and everything. And pretty much everybody on the opposite side, the enemy, are left unscathed outside of the like Joseph Quinn and Cosmo Jarvis. Everybody else is pretty much okay as well too. Maybe not psychologically, but physically.
Well,
And
there's all this damage there too, and especially when you first get that quiet moment after they leave, you're in that family's house, which
yeah,
again, do like this is just a regular family that just happened to have a home that they were in, and they completely destroyed it. And honestly, it's to the point of almost being like Alex Garland punching you in your ribs and being like, "Do you get it? Like, hey, we were in this country and we caused a lot of damage, and we left and we didn't really know what to do with the broken pieces." It's almost bordering on being that obvious, but
hmm
it's still a really striking moment too,
yeah,
especially after you get through all the carnage
yeah,
and they leave and you are left with this broken home. And yeah, as you said, all these insurgents who are still there. So it's like, did it really matter? Did it amount to anything? Which is what that entire conflict in that part of the world we are asking ourselves.
I think if the movie would have like made these soldiers have dialogue scenes of conversation with the family, and if this movie was Ridley Scott or Jerry Bruckheimer kind of stringing this thing along, right? Like Black Hawk Down, I think that this movie would have been obnoxious. And I think that, to your point, Josh, this movie, all the carnage and everything's focused on these guys, and we're supposed to focus on these guys, right? Because they're our guys, and we want them out of there. But no, the real point at the end of it is then like, okay, then what did any of this amount to other than two guys got killed, like got their lives physically altered for forever. None of these guys got anywhere from what they needed to, in terms of their mission. These bad guys over here, nothing happens to them. And meanwhile, the ones that really are the collateral damage in all this is this family. And no one's going to be able to put this together. No one's going to give them their innocence back, their home back. And I think that, yes, you're right. I think weirdly in another project or another way of handling this material, it could have been very on the nose and very saccharine. And I actually think like it's the best note to end the movie on and not even further explore, just be like, this is what we do every time. And honestly, then going through a montage of the guys afterwards is like, yeah, I'm going through the montages of these guys, and most of their faces are like, washed out. But I'm still thinking about, this movie's dedicated to them, but it's also really about this family, at the end, and how many missions are like this. And I think a lot of the films that we see that tackle war, especially like wars in this period, Iraq War, Afghanistan, they are modern warfare movies. They don't take the time to do that. It's obvious because we talk about that on a daily basis. When it talking about the casualties of war, we're literally going through two wars across the world right now, and the United States is difficult and just deplorable, uh, stance on both of them, right? And what's going on in the Ukraine, and obviously what's going on with Israel and Palestine, and our lack of effort in any of those. And this movie is more aware of what we should do or what we shouldn't do than a lot of what's going on now. So it felt really weirdly resonant. And it was only 95 minutes. So it really doesn't have a lot of time, this movie, to become as preachy as its predecessors were. And with talking with Mendoza and really Garland, who kind of stepped back and didn't want to talk too much about Mendoza, about all this, and let Mendoza kind of take the reins of the conversation that night.
Hmm.
That's very much what they were like, and I think that really shows in the film. And I like that not really there isn't really like a standout performance. It really is an ensemble. It really is a collective. No one's
It
really.
is. Although I can name you my standout performer.
Oh, okay, yeah. I kind of have one though for myself too, but I'm curious who's yours.
He doesn't have that much to do, but honestly, I am just in love with whatever Cosmo Jarvis does.
I thought same Josh. I thought he was incredible in this movie.
There is a moment where he gives a look to another character, and in that 10 seconds, I felt like he was delivering the best performance in the entire movie.
Yeah.
I love Cosmo Jarvis. I feel so vindicated because I've been like a OG fan of his for
Hmm.
like over a decade. And it's just been great to see him finally get the recognition he has deserved. I really do feel like he's one of the greatest actors that are working today and very, very underrated. And I love the presence that he brings. He just feels like such a real member of this team that's gruff, but there's such this world that is not being said at the same time. I find him to be just a fascinating performer. So much so that when he got injured and was just laying down for the rest of the movie, it's like, well, man, that's sort of disappointing. I wish he had more to do than just like give a look and then lay on the ground in pain, mostly unconscious. But even still, just doing that, I found him to be fascinating.
I thought he was great. I thought Joseph Quinn was really good too. I thought
Yeah.
both of them have the the task of being the ones that are the most affected by this war, and I thought that they are really able to, but a lot of the stuff before the accident happens, that sort of the quiet calmness inside that we see of Quinn. Um, just oppose that to, I think Will Poulter does a fine job in the second act of the film of being shell shocked. But I gotta say this, Josh, we talk a lot about like movie stars or people that have like a presence about them that when they're on screen, it's kind of like, okay, you can feel that. And I know I was very high on this guy 2 years ago for his performance in May December. But when Charles Melton does come on screen in this movie, it feels like everybody else doesn't matter at a certain point. He has to be that calming presence and that take charge mentality. And I think he does it fantastically. I think the problem is it's like he's just so goddamn good looking that it kind of for me, I was watching, I was going to go, I don't think anyone's ever joined the military and been that hot before. But, and, like looked like they just came from a photo shoot beforehand.
Yeah.
But I thought he was super effective as well, too. And he just has like, again, a real screen presence, and he has to be because, Will Poulter's the leader of these men, but he has a shell shock moment. He has, this moment of PTSD, and Melton has to take over, and he does that effectively. But I do agree with you. Like, I think Cosmo Jarvis is incredible here, and someone that if you're like Josh and you had the stock, like keep holding it. I thought like, Kit Connor and Michael Gandolfini, these are like really young actors, and I think they do a fine job. But I think some of the more veteran actors of this film or people that we've seen in other films before do a very good job here.
Yeah. One of the
Um,
younger ones that I also did actually really like was Defero Wonotai, who is essentially playing
he's Ray
Ray.
Mendoza, yeah.
Yeah. I thought he actually did a really good job too.
He has like a great moment in here, and I didn't get to ask Mendoza this, but it is like the one lingering thing. He has that moment when he gets stuck in the escape vehicle, and he basically went like, "I didn't get out," and it feels like there's a little bit of like regret on his face for not being there to be with the
Hmm.
rest of those guys to get everybody out there, and that it almost feels like a little bit of, I wouldn't say cowardice, but it feels like a little bit of like, why am I in here, and why did my instinct tell me to get in here rather than to get out as soon as possible? And so it's a very interesting thing to see that scene shot by the guy with an actor playing the guy.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting sort of meta look at oneself. And it was very personal, for Mendoza. A lot of these, even though this is all recreated on the London soundstage, this is all skill for shot, location scouting, exactly how it looked. And it was, and a lot of the guys that were part that were, looked at in the film, they were, they were then, they were brought to set and had to kind of bring all that up. And that's got to be, a lot to take in. And it was, a wonderful conversation that night. I don't think the movie is like the greatest movie of all time, though, Josh. Like, I agree with you. I think it's like a really solid film. It's like a good B minus film, and I'm kind of interested because I was listening to the Big Picture and Sean Fennessy talk about with Garland, and he said he's kind of done with the whole phase of directing. I think he wants to go back to being a writer and have the film go through another person's eyes and go back to that collaboration process. He has like a project that he may or may not direct down the road, but he seems to be more back to writing, and that'll be very interesting to see. Which is interesting. I mean, like his filmography is one that has got its peaks and valleys, and has extreme big highs. I think like Ex Machina is a fantastic film, and I think I also really do love Annihilation, and and
Yeah,
then
that's
it,
really good too.
and then it has some low. It has a definitive low, and then it has these films that are, I think, are just interesting to talk
For sure.
about. I
Yeah.
mean, they may not be like the greatest thing, and they aren't, but they're interesting, and it will be kind of also interesting to see him go back to what we've known him before, you know. So, but
Yeah.
Warfare is in theaters, and Josh and I give it a recommendation, if anything, just for that sound design of the film. which is truly incredible. And I didn't understand why Civil War didn't get nominated for sound last year.
I don't understand it. And even as somebody that didn't like Civil War, I walked away from that movie still being like, but the sound design is incredible.
That's a
So I,
early contender already for sound design here too. Like
yeah, but
it's
if Civil War didn't make it, like,
no, I know for sure.
is this gonna do it? I don't know.
I I don't know. I mean, maybe you have to get Mendoza to go out there with the sound designers and speak on the campaign trail. It's a long year. There's a lot of movies still yet to come out, but um, and there's a lot of movies weirdly in theaters, but not a lot of like great ones. But this is a solid flick to see, and it's 95 minutes, so you'd be in and out of there. You won't have to, some of the best films of the year are just like 95 minutes. Like the best movie of the year is 90 minutes, 99 minutes, right? Black Bag. And then you're in and out and you're just having a great time. So uh that's gonna do it for this week's show. Josh, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd at JR Parham, and you can also find all my work at Next Best Picture and Awards Watch.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. If you like podcasts, obviously, because you're listening to this one, listen to Director Watch. We have the final film in our Elaine May movie series coming out this week, and that is Ishtar. Very divisive film. A lot of people really love it or really hate it. And Jay and I had a really great conversation about that film. You can check that out on Thursday. iTunes, Spotify, 5-star reviews. While you're over on the website, please sign up for the newsletter. It's the best place to get all of our news, reviews, interviews sent to you all in one place. We will be back next week. We will be talking about Ryan Coogler's latest film, In Sinners, one of the big films of the year. It's already gaining massive reviews and high praise, and we will be talking about that in depthly, as well as we'll talk about some of our favorite horror movies of the last decade and of the century so far. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all next time.